If your current AI strategy for your business is opening ChatGPT, typing a question, and just like hoping for the best, we really need to fix that. I'm Katie Burt. I'm with Ladies Who Launch, and we're here to help women founders get funded and find the education and resources that they need to build a business that thrives. In the next hour, you're going to hear 24 different AI tools that real founders just like you are actually using and how they're using them to save time, clean up their workflows, and run more efficient and profitable businesses. Because the issue that most founders are struggling with isn't whether or not AI is useful or worth it. It's figuring out what specific tool is going to be worth your time and what stuff is just another tab open on your desktop. We kept this conversation very practical. You'll hear from two different founders who are actively using AI in their day-to-day, and one product leader who's building these tools, breaking down how this stuff shows up in real life for the average person just like you and me. Whether it's PR outreach, operations, customer insights, we cover all of it. And that is the stuff that's going to actually move your business forward. Let's get into it.
Thanks, everyone. I'm really excited to chat today. The talking with founders generally gets me very excited, but the AI topic in particular and how we can all leverage it in our businesses is probably one of my most favorite things to talk about these days, which my husband can attest to because I don't think I shut up about it very often, to be honest. So just to give a little bit of context about me, and I think this is helpful because what you'll learn is I do not have a technical background. And I think that that's important to know because everything I'm going to talk about today is coming from a place of no experience with technology. I mean, other than what most of us are familiar with. And so hopefully that helps you feel a little bit more comfortable in just how accessible some of this all is. So my background, I'm a former attorney. I was at a commercial law firm for many years and then in-house at McDonald's for a while doing mostly IP and marketing law. I left that career to launch our business Larkin, which I still run today. We bootstrapped it to this day. It's a patented line of maternity and postpartum clothing, and we started with very humble beginnings. So for some fun photos, that's actually my mom in the top corner who sewed our initial prototype. She sewed that many years ago now. I mean, she sewed that in 2017. That was Mother's Day 2017. Actually, we were at her house for brunch, and then we ultimately launched in 2019. And so the picture next to it is what a lot of the early days looked like of me with lots of children on my lap, out of our guest bedroom, delivering packages to the post office. Fortunately, we have come a long way and we now have our warehouse and have grown. And while my kids are still often in my office on my lap, it doesn't look like this anymore, thankfully. But we manufacture entirely in the US. That's a photo of our factory, which is out of New York. And all of our partners are in the US. And we've scaled it quite a bit over the last several years. The last couple of years, we were named to the Inc. 5000, number 343 overall, and on the Inc. 500 female founders list. And now through KLB Advisory, I partner with a lot of other founders on growth strategy and in particular, how we can leverage AI and implement it to get the most ROI for our businesses. So I wanted to start with a framework that helps me think about kind of what my AI stack looks like and the different ways we can use AI. And I think that it's important to note that I don't think one of these buckets is better or more important than the other. I think that there are great use cases within each bucket. And I've kind of started at one end and moved along the chain to eventually touching on all three. So I think it's great, no matter where you are within these buckets, there's really great uses for all of them. And I think it's about just getting comfortable with each one and progressing as you go. So the way I think about it is first we have the chat. So this is what, a lot of us are familiar with. And I should note that on the next slide, I am going to talk about kind of for me in particular, the different tools I use within each. So chat is right. You're asking it something, it answers. The value is in the conversation itself. You're using it for things like strategy, research, analysis, brainstorming. You're going to get a great answer in the moment. And I like to think of it like a brilliant advisor on call 24/7. It's incredibly useful and it's giving you good insights and helping you be more efficient. But ultimately, you're still taking that and doing the work with the output that you've gotten from that one task at a time. And then the next bucket is Copilot. So these are things like Gamma, Lovable, Cowork, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but there's still a chat component with it. You're still giving it direction, but the value here isn't just in the answer and the output itself. It's that the tool actually is going to execute something for you. So it's going to take a multi-step chain of actions to complete a task, whereas the chatbot might give you a couple outputs. A copilot might give you 25 different outputs to get ultimately to the task you've directed it to execute. So it's actually doing the work here, not just advising. And a subset of this is computer use. And so a specific type of copilot worth calling out here on its own, I think, is a tool like Claude's Cowork, where you can download it as an app or a Chrome extension. And this is where the AI is actually going to take over your browser and local files that you give it access to and does work within it. So it might redline agreements for you. It might organize files on your desktop, build PowerPoints, navigate websites while you're basically at your computer working alongside it, and essentially babysitting it to an extent. And again, we'll get more into this, but basically the use here, I think, is because a lot of the agents don't have access to the right APIs or connectors. So Claude Cowork handles that last mile browser task that some of the other tools can't reach. And so I basically describe it as like AI with hands, which sounds a little bit creepy, I guess, but helps me visualize that. Okay, and then this last bucket is the autonomous agents. So this for me is where the real leverage has been. These aren't one-off tools you're going to pick up and use. I like to think of them as like workers that you've hired, except they don't sleep, they don't take PTO, and they never forget, right? Well, that's not always true. Sometimes you do have to remind them, but for the most part. So you're going to assign them with an entire area of responsibility. So this is not just a one-off task, but they're going to own a domain and they're going to run it proactively, automatically, day and night, whether you're at your computer or not. So they're like top level team members and they might own a bunch of tasks within that domain. And we have several of these running right now and are building out more. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like for our business. Here's what this looks like in practice for me. And again, to be clear, like none of this required a developer or any kind of technical background. It's been a lot of experimentation and playing. I also think that when things really got busy with AI, and there's still to this day, right? There's new tools every 5 minutes. And I was like a kid at a candy store trying to play with all of them and learn all of them and do all the things. And I think I had to take a step back and strike the right balance between, I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. So I do like having multiple tools that I use. But I think that at some point, you want to find the tools that you're most comfortable with and then really dive into those and build out your stack, or you're going to end up overpaying for a lot of different tools that do a lot of the same things and kind of get to a point, for me at least, what was happening is I felt like I was dabbling in all of them, but not becoming an expert in any of them. So I think, again, it's just that balance between having enough tools that work for your needs and not putting all your eggs in one basket, but also not overdoing it so you can get really comfortable with a select set of specific tools. So within kind of the research and brainstorming bucket, the key ones I'm using are Perplexity, and that's typically for anything research based. I love the way it can pull deep market research reports and it'll give you all of the sources there. I pull a lot of competitor data, industry data. It searches the live web and gives me source answers. And then Notebook, I use it a lot in conjunction with Perplexity, actually. And I think it's a bit of an unsung hero because I don't think we talk a ton about Notebook typically. But it's got some really amazing features. So you can pull in any sources you want. So for example, I might take a 50-page deep research report I pulled from Perplexity, but I don't have time to go through the whole report. But I can ask Notebook questions about that report, and it's only going to pull from that report. It's not going to hallucinate. It's not going to pull from other sources across the web. It's going to pull specifically from that report. You can add other sources. So if you want to look at that report alongside maybe a YouTube video that covers your topic, you can put a link in there. It can pull documents from your Google Drive and kind of synthesize it all. And you can ask it questions, but you know that any output you're getting is pulled from those specific sources. And then it's got some amazing features in its ability to turn things into slides or infographics, which I use a lot because I'm a visual learner, or if I'm sharing things with my team, we use it to turn it into infographics a lot. I also it can turn things into podcasts. So for example, if I'm looking into a topic, I might put a bunch of sources in there. I'm in the car all the time driving my kids around, turn something into a podcast, listen to it in the car, and that just saved me basically hours of trying to go through all those different sources. And I've now got a 15-minute summary in audio form that I can listen to. And then Claude and ChatGPT, I know that most of us are probably very familiar with. This, I think, comes down to personal preference. I use both for different things. But generally, it's, my thinking partner when I'm working through a decision, drafting something maybe that's more of a one-off situation, or pressure testing an idea, things like that. And then the next bucket is the I'm calling it the voice and capture bucket. So the two tools here that I use are Whisper, which is my dictation tool, and I use that on my desktop and mobile. Um, I resisted for a while because I was like, why can't I just use my microphone feature? I will say it's incredibly powerful. It formats things really well. Even for fast typers, I think it saves you a ton of time and it cuts out filler words. And you can even actually literally whisper to it, and it will. I was at a very loud cheer competition this weekend, sitting and waiting and working, and you can imagine how loud it was around me, and I was able to dictate to my computer. I probably looked like a crazy person, but it pulled out exactly what I needed, and it was perfectly written. And then Otter's my note taker of choice. I know a lot of people like Fireflies and Granola, so look into which ones you like, but that's been a huge asset for me. And then Copilot tasks. So we talked a little bit about this. Nano Banana, I wanted to call out because it's a tool in and of itself, but it's also within Gemini, Google's LLM. And that's actually how I created these different graphics, which again are nothing fancy, but I wanted a quick visual. And I gave it the colors that we're using so that it went into the slide deck seamlessly. I made sure I gave it the fonts I wanted and just kind of gave it my general design look, saying I wanted something minimal, and gave it the content that I was talking about and what I wanted it to cover, and it generated these visuals for me. So I use that a lot for things like this. And then again, computer use, I mentioned an example just from today was I needed to pull a report from Klaviyo, our email platform, that I couldn't find. And I put it into Copilot, and kind of in front of me, it found and downloaded that report for me, which was a lot quicker than if I had tried to do that myself. And I've used it for redlining frequently as well. And then autonomous agents. So this is the one I get most excited about, and I think that we've seen a lot of change just within the last few months, and where it's really becoming more and more accessible again for non-technical folks. So these each own their own function and handle them continuously. So I use them for both my advisory work and I use them for Larkin. And I'll give you a couple examples just of how we're using it. But I mentioned a couple tools you can use here. Claude Code is a big one people are using as well. I will say mine that I use most frequently is Base 44 for both the app build outs, and they have a new super agents feature that's really powerful. I mean, it was literally launched within the last month. So there's still some bugs and things like that. But for a non-technical person, that's the one I feel that the interface is easiest to use. But I like to, as a founder, look at my bottom line and think about this in terms of where are the places, especially that we're spending? So whether it's tools or people, and not so much even, I'm not trying to suggest that everybody, y'all need to go fire everybody you're working with and replace everyone with AI. That is not the message. I think that we can use these agents to make the way our people work and our tools are used in a smarter, more efficient way. So I'm looking at it in terms of, for example, we were about to spend a significant monthly fee on a subscription for an inventory platform that was going to help with all our forecasting and our buying because it's gotten a lot more complex as we've grown and have so many different channels over the years. It was not an unsubstantial amount of money, and we realized that we could pretty easily, again, as non-technical folks, build out a custom solution for ourselves that's covering that piece. I have a personal assistant agent that scans my emails and every morning and has access to my calendar every Monday morning, and then every morning throughout the week. I get a weekly brief and a daily brief that tells me like, here are the big upcoming things you have on your calendar. Here's the emails came in that are urgent and need your response right away here. And then there will already be drafts in my Gmail for me. It will give me reminders on things. It will send me pre-meeting briefs. So if I'm meeting with someone new, it will do the research and I'll have that in a brief before I get on the call. It will it's connected to WhatsApp. So yesterday I was going to pick my kids up from school. I couldn't remember one of the terms we had with one of our wholesale partners, and we had negotiated an agreement. I messaged it on WhatsApp to look through my email and figure out where we were at in terms of this particular term and what the final signed agreement said. And within 30 seconds, I had an answer back. So before I even got home and could get to my computer, I already knew the answer to that. We have a PR agent that is sending me every week. I get updates on the different editors we are tracking and want to pitch, and it drafts the initial pitches, and they're living in my Google Drive ready to go for me to review and send out. It has a tracker where it's monitoring all of our outreach and where things are at and making suggestions. So that's just to give you an idea of the types of agents you can create. Again, we're really going through each bucket within our P&L and thinking about it that way and prioritizing accordingly, because I think the options are pretty pretty vast when you start digging into this. The big lessons learned here for me are AI is a worker, not just a thinker. So when I went from the shift from chatting with it to it's working for me is again where things really changed for me. And then the second is to match the tool to the task. So again, it's not that you have to just work within one of those buckets, but it's thinking about what your ultimate goal is. So do you have a one-off question? Maybe that's a task for a chatbot. If it's a multi-step execution task, but you need to be involved, use a co-pilot. Something that you want running every single week that need a bunch of information saved about, build an agent and let it own that domain. So you don't have to keep things doing manually when you can have this system running for you. And then the third is how you think about your team. So I think it's important that you need to give it access or it's useless, right? It needs to be able to access certain files, maybe certain reports, API integrations with some of your platforms. We have a lot of different places we track data, and that's all places that I've given it access to. But I think just like a new employee coming in, you want guardrails in place, right? You're not going to give it a run of everything. So that's where you're going to think about what that API key covers. Is it read-only access? Do you want it actually drafting something so it needs write access, but you got to put a guardrail in so that it doesn't go publish something without your approval? There are a lot of ways to put I like to think of it as like human in the loop roadblocks essentially, so that it can't take the next step until there's kind of been a checkpoint where myself or someone from my team is now involved before it's moving forward at all. And then the last piece is that you're still the strategist. So I know there's a lot of concern and talk lately about what this is doing to our cognitive decline and all of that sort of things. I mean, still be a thinking partner here, right? You're not it you have so much value to add. You have so much perspective. And I think about that with my team too. I want to help them work smarter and more efficiently, but I don't want to replace their unique experience and backgrounds and perspective here. So AI can execute almost anything, but it can't think for you. So it's really, I think, the blend of the two that's the powerful leverage play there. So I'd love to stay connected. KatieBlouin.com is probably the best way to reach me. There's a contact form there and you can reach out. I'm always happy to chat. And then LinkedIn, I actually just within like the last week started writing on Substack. So I write a lot about this stuff, just general founder notes. Um, and feel free to check that out if that's of interest. And then the last piece is just that I'm actually I've found a need for a space for product-based business founders in particular, because we have a lot of unique challenges with things like inventory and forecasting and all of that. So a place where we can talk about those types of things and have content that's tailored towards that. So I actually have a beta group right now for the community, but if that's something you're interested in, please feel to reach out and I'd be happy to let you know when we're opening up that more broadly.
I am Samantha Gold. A little bit about me and my background. I come from 12 plus years of experience in tech and sales leadership at companies like Salesforce. Formerly, I was the CEO of Elizabeth James The Label, an eight-figure women's clothing brand. And just a year ago, I launched my own brand in the baby, children's, and women's sleepwear space. And I also launched another company at the same time because I'm insane, a consulting business called Atlas Row, where I now support other female founders of product-based businesses. And so in under a year, we actually just celebrated our 1 year anniversary at Motet on March 15th. We have secured partnerships with Bloomingdale's, Macy's, and we're currently underway implementing with Nordstrom, Dillard's. We're in 75 plus boutiques. We've been featured in Forbes, Good Housekeeping, Glamour, Business Insider, The Bump, to name a few. And all of this has been completely self-funded. I sold my house in Charleston and put all of the proceeds of the sale of the home into launching my own brand. I actually did this from Australia. From the other side of the world. And 6 months ago, I moved to Austin with my two little ones. I have a daughter, Blair, and a son, Wesley, who are really the inspiration behind the brand. But being that I was self-funded, and I'm sure many people on this call can relate to this, I was super scrappy, and I am still super scrappy. My operating cost today, monthly, outside of inventory, is under about $1,500 a month. And that is in large part due to the AI tools and offshore support that I am leveraging. So when I first launched the brand a year ago, I came across offshore support. It was really popular. I think it's obviously really popular in the US, but really popular in Australia. And I had actually a team of women in the Philippines who were all moms looking for flexible hours to help me launch the brand. And so 80% of my work of the tasks that I needed, whether that was like social media, reaching out to editors for press, really sort of anything within the business wholesale, bigger retailers, all of that, the website, Shopify, updates, editing, photography, etc., was all powered by offshore support. And today that ratio really has flipped as I just continue to test and try new things. AI now powers about 90% of my operations, with offshore support filling the remaining 10%. And so also, as part of me having a lot of this success with Motet and my background in retail and tech, I had women, other female founders of product-based businesses, really approaching me and saying, can you help me replicate that success within my own business? And so out of that, Atlas Row was born, where I now support other female founders. And I think what's so cool, I actually really specialize too in like the family, women's, children's space. So what's very cool about my work with Motet and Atlas Row is that there's just so much synergy between all of us, whether that's collabs between my clients or Motet, whether that's introductions to major retailers like the ones I mentioned, or ones like Shopbop or Target, getting into Amazon, all of those. I really feel like a rising tide lifts all ships. And so I don't see anyone as competition. I see everyone as a collaboration partner. I am like a girl's girl through and through. I'm your biggest cheerleader. I'm an open book. And so I'm really excited for this conversation today of sharing the opportunity to share some of the insider tips that I have with all of you. All right. So when you launch a brand, some of the challenges or really opportunities out there are around, building brand awareness with your consumers. And so how do you go about, without hiring a PR agency, which could typically cost you, 5 to 10K a month in terms of a monthly retainer? How do you go about getting featured in major publications to help drive brand awareness? Also building a loyal community of customers and fellow moms. I have not to date spent any money on Meta ads, which is kind of crazy. So everything for me has been organic through this, community of engaged moms that I'll share about. And then also, how do you go about landing placements in major retailers and boutiques to drive wholesale and sales growth? Obviously, you want to make sure that your margins make sense for wholesale. But I think something that I heard about a year ago, which really shifted my perspective on wholesale, was think about it as free marketing for your brand. This is a great way to get it in front of moms or whoever your target market is, where they're discovering the brand at their local boutique. And then they love it so much that they, go online. You want to make sure that it's easy for them to know where to go. So I have like hang tags that have my Instagram, that have my website, to hopefully drive that person who purchases in store to my website to get them direct as a customer and capture their customer data. And so I came up with really scrappy ways to do all of this. And so I can share some of them here, and I know we'll get to like the technology side of it. But I personally, and really through offshore support in the beginning, reached out one-on-one to editors. I will say, if anyone on this call is looking to do PR, I have a ton of editor contacts. And now that I do this for clients, I actually asked them all. I said, what resonates more? An outreach from a PR agency or an outreach from a founder? And 100% of them, I kid you not, said an email from a founder. And so again, like, you can leverage technology to make this super easy, but if you're not doing PR for your own brand, I think that that's a missed opportunity, right? Editors want to hear from you. The fact that you're spending time reaching out to them shows how much you care. So it shows how passionate you are about your brand, and is definitely going to give you a higher chance of landing those features, whether that's a podcast, an entrepreneur feature, or if you're a product-based business trying to get into some of those more major publications like a Good Housekeeping or a Gift Guide or something along those lines. In terms of building a loyal community of customers and fellow moms, something that I did there that just happened super organically, because literally I was launching this brand from Sydney, Australia. I started to share what I was working on behind the scenes. So I actually launched in public 6 months prior, and I was just sharing what I was working on. And the feedback that I got was amazing. And now I don't develop any new product without getting feedback from my audience. So every single decision, whether that's a new style, whether that's a new print, I have something that I've built that I call my inner circle. It's now grown to over 6,000 moms who are just my close friends on Instagram, and I run polls all the time. So I'm like, do you like this print, this new style? Even for like my website, if I'm thinking about like, I just did like a rebranded card, right? An insert card that goes into the packages, especially when they're coming from like major retailers, right? And I'm drop shipping and I'm trying to convert them to a direct customer. And just in terms of like what resonated with the style, with the links, and what I found was like everyone said a letter from me, right? A letter from the founder is what resonated more. And then I included a QR code. It was like $20 off their next order if they came and entered their email, their phone number. I captured that customer data. So just like really kind of, unique ways to drive loyalty as well, because they're now super engaged with my brand, and it helps reduce risk from an inventory perspective, because I know what prints are going to resonate with my customers. And oftentimes it's not the ones that I think. And so I'm so grateful for those customer insights so that I don't make a choice a poor decision that leads to me having inventory that goes, that's not sold, especially because I am self-funded too. So every dollar for me is just so important. And then also in terms of landing these placements in major retailers, like so many people are like, oh, you must have had a lot of connections and da 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 da. Like, no, not really. I'm just so persistent and I'm really scrappy when it comes to reaching out to people. And, I'm sending 5, 6 emails. Sometimes before I get a response, and sometimes they'll say it's not a fit right now. And okay, I'll reach back out to them in 6 months, or maybe I'll go to the women's buyer instead of the children's buyer, right? Like, I don't take no for an answer. There's always other opportunities. The other thing that I'm always doing, right? Like, press does not equal sales, but it is another compelling event to reach out. And so, say Bloomingdale's said no to me. Well, last week I was featured in Good Housekeeping. There's a reason for me to reach back out to them and say, hey, just wanted to get this on your radar. We were just featured in their gift guide for grandmothers, right? Like, yeah, I took a look at your site. It doesn't look like you have much in this space. I would love to fill that gap for you. Okay, so those are some of my outcomes, the features in those major publications. The other thing that I recommend too is like make friends with these people. Like, I kid you not, I'm going through a divorce right now, and the editor from Glamour that featured me was going through a divorce, and I had gifted her some of my women's PJs, and she told me that they brought her so much comfort her first night in her new house. And when I decided to separate from my husband, I reached out to her, and she was like, I will pause everything today. Let's hop on a call. What can I do? How can I support you? And we've just honestly become friends. Same with the Forbes editor. She also has a product-based business. So like pro bono, I've offered her, some time, some consulting hours to go through her business and shared some insights there. She's actually introduced me to, people at Entrepreneur to do a workshop on how I'm leveraging AI in the business. And so asking them about, who are their contacts? What are the other opportunities where they might be, or we might be a fit for them? Like, just build friendships, build relationships with these people like you would, in your personal life. And again, these boutique placements that I've gotten, I've really leveraged. I've really leveraged my community as well. And so I've asked women in my community, where do you shop, right, for your children's clothing? And they would share that with me, and I'd say, okay, I'd reach out to that boutique and say, okay, Katie Burt recommended I reach out. She's one of your, customers, would love to hop on a call and connect. That resonates so much more than just a random email. I shared a lot of this. So again, the community, identifying aligned accounts. The way that I do that, I actually have, this is like pretty much the only part of my business that I still leverage offshore support for. I have someone on my team that looks at other brands or even influencers that have my target audience, and we send 100 personal DMs a day. And I have a sort of outreach sequence that I'm happy to even share with you guys to leverage. I can send it to Katie after this call. In terms of audience insights, I use SparkToro. It really helps me understand where my customers are shopping, what platforms they use, what podcasts they're listening to. And that all informs my outreach strategy. So I've built my own like proprietary AI powered system. I leverage Claude to help write these pitches. I leverage my background in sales to really tweak them and make sure that they're resonating. Those are all tailored to essentially, what's coming up, whether it's Mother's Day, Earth Day, back to school, etc. And then I have separate entrepreneur and podcast sequences that are running year round. I also use Signal Hire to source direct contacts. In terms of wholesale outreach, OverJoy.AI has been the biggest game changer for my business. If you're a product-based business, you haven't heard of OverJoy, I really strongly recommend that. I have emails sent out for both the PR and OverJoy from me, the founder, every 5 minutes, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., max 100 per day, so I don't get caught in any spam filters, minimum of 5 emails per sequence. And then different touch points, right? It turns off the sequence as soon as someone responds to me, and that's where I jump in. Lessons I learned, again, start lean, stay lean. I didn't have any investors. I didn't overhire, overspend. And this has honestly been my biggest competitive differentiator because I've had to be super scrappy and get creative. And I think Katie kind of like touched on this too. AI is a force multiplier. It's not a shortcut. I'm constantly testing, learning, and building out new systems, and then also rolling those out to my clients. But it only works when you build around it thoughtfully, and you have that human element as well. Community for me has been my unfair advantage. Inviting customers into the process, like truly to help you co-create, is going to lead to increased sales, increased engagement, and reduce your risk from an inventory perspective. And again, on the PR side, right? It doesn't happen by luck. It happens when you're sending the right pitch to the right editor at the right time. So build systems around that, and have them optimized and running in the background. And for me, like the biggest thing, people are always like, how have you had so much success in under a year? It's about execution. I execute relentlessly. I am so persistent. AI allows me to do that a lot more effectively, but I refuse to let things stall. And so if someone says like Dillard's right now is kind of dragging their feet, like I'm following up with them every 3 days, right? Like being professionally persistent and executing is truly my differentiator. Ways that you can connect with me, there's a link to my LinkedIn. Check out my brand, shopmotet.com. And if you're interested in learning more about my consulting services, you can head to theatlasrow.com. And I'd love to connect with some of you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Katie. Hey, everyone. Lovely to connect with you. I'm Anika. Here's a little bit more about me. Currently, I am a senior product manager at Zapier. So one of the things that I work on is building AI tools and software for small businesses, as well as using them myself. And I have some examples of that later on. Prior to that, I actually worked for an AI marketing startup, and we were building agentic tools for influencer marketing. So Samantha was talking a little bit about that earlier. We were dealing with some of those same challenges of where can you use AI and where do you need to stay personal. And then prior to that, I was working for a company called Informa Markets Fashion, putting on fashion trade shows. And I was specifically on the digital side, looking at like new digital products to connect these audiences. So that's my background in product. And then in addition, I've also written a book about online communities, which informs a lot of my product work. And I began my career years ago as a journalist. And so a lot of that understanding human behavior and asking questions about, how we do what we do and why informs my approach to building products. So hopefully I can give you some helpful examples. Here's some of the problems that I initially started coming across day to day. The reason I start with these problems is because one of the biggest things that I've noticed people often ask themselves is, where are the real opportunities for automation and AI in my life and my business? And I think the best way to start that is really to start thinking about what are some of the key problems that you're facing and then start to troubleshoot from there. One of the first ones that I came across is a challenge that many of you may have come across as well. When I create a lot of listings for sale online, and it was taking forever to write the descriptions, find the images, research the prices, just get and compile all of that information. And so I wanted to understand how I could better automate that problem. The other is that I am part of several different online communities where we share outfits and ideas with each other. And I'd used several different outfit of the day style apps, and I didn't like the UX on any of them. I felt they were hard to use, they weren't beautiful, they didn't let me share things in the way that I wanted. And I really wanted to be able to do that. And this is where AI turned out to be kind of a major capacity shift for me. The final one, which again, many of us may relate to, is every time I was buying things online, I was struggling with understanding the variations in tariff and import duties. And it just seemed like every product had its own schedule and it could be extraordinary. And so I said, okay, how do I better understand the information that's out there and kind of reliably calculate what I need to pay on an ongoing basis? And the ones that I landed on that I'm about to show you, so of course I do work for Zapier, but I used a Zapier agent to help me with this research and writing problem, and it turned out to be a great solution. In order to build this outfit app, I actually used Lovable. I want to point out that I work for a software company, but I am not a software developer, so everything that you will see was something that I created myself without necessarily needing to know code. And then finally, I used Claude to help me create a regular tariff and import duty calculator. And I think one of the key things to note about all of the tools that I'm about to show you is that they are spaces where I and yourself can build these tools using natural language, which means just, the way we communicate with each other rather than needing to use code. And I think that's one of the kind of going back to Katie's presentation at the beginning, I think that's been one of the game changers of our current moment around AI is that we have that ability. This is a fair bit of, clunky screenshot, but basically I used a Zapier agent in order to build out this product listing generator for myself. So the way that I set up this agent is similarly to Katie of Larkin was talking a little bit about different types of automation. So this is one that I knew I wanted it to trigger when I had a new product, and I looked at different ways to make that happen. And I was able to write out my instructions, so you can see that on the left side of the screen, and say this is what I want my agent to do. I gave it some really specific instructions and I continued to refine that through testing. And I gave it the ability to access certain tools. So I gave it the ability to access my email as well as my Google Sheets in order to pull information. And what I said is, here's what I want you to do. And this is when I want you to do it. And so basically now I have this automation. On the right side, you're going to see a sample of the type of email that they send me, which basically includes links to photos, a description, as well as a ton of information that I no longer need to find myself. This has been incredibly helpful and a huge time saver for me. A process that originally used to take me like 15 to 20 minutes now takes me maybe 5. And so I think that's one example of like a fantastic automation. I used an agent for the automation we just talked about, but my next problem was really around creating like an actual web app experience. And that's something that an agent, which is great at research and writing, may not necessarily be able to do. So for this, I needed a tool that was actually going to help me create user experiences and stand up an app. Again, similar structure. On the left side of the slide, you're going to see the interface from Lovable, which is the tool that I used. So right here, you can see in each of these cases, I really started with, a fairly detailed natural language prompt with a whole lot of information about what I wanted that I then continued to refine. This is what I initially told Lovable I wanted to do. I had some ideas around how I wanted it to look. And through a series of discussions, Lovable was able to help prompt me and also create pretty much this entire experience. So on the right, you're going to see that this is the web app experience that I've been able to create. It has logins. It lets me create collections. It has a little feature on the side called Spin where it looks at my outfits and recommends combinations. And this is something that saves me, it brings me a lot of enjoyment, but it also saves me a lot of time. When I'm deciding what I want to wear, it's fun to have AI kind of take a shot at the problem for me, and it reduces some of my cognitive load. And then in the collections, I can actually put together collections and share them with other people, which was a feature I really wanted. I really like the experience of it. I think it's beautiful to look at. I enjoy scrolling through all of the stuff in my wardrobe, which I didn't in a lot of other apps I used. So I think this was an example of, and I think what's key to note here is on the left, I've got the prompt, but as I continue to use Lovable, and you all might, if you try it, I went through and continued to refine what I wanted it to do. And it would ask me clarifying questions around, how I wanted this app to work. And it was a great way to stand up something that I can use and share with friends. Finally, the third problem I was talking about was understanding tariff schedules and applying them to individual garments. So this is something that I honestly was not doing very effectively. I was buying things, I was getting random tariff bills, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. And so I was working with Claude, and Claude has a couple different features. In the main chat window, I was able to ask it in a one-off way, hey, like, can you look up the tariff schedule? Here's a link to the item, like, look up where it was manufactured, etc. But that's a lot to type in over and over again. So what I said is, okay, Claude can do this. I'm going to turn this into a skill. So a skill is something that your AI can access. It's a set of specialized instructions. Your AI can access and execute those consistently over time. So it's great for a problem that you want to solve in a similar way over and over. On the left, you're going to see that I started with a fairly detailed natural language prompt. And that included what data sources I wanted, Claude to consult, structures, challenges, problems, and then the response. On the right, you will see that it created a little HTML interaction. I can either manually enter information about a product or I can paste a URL. And it is going to go through and it's going to look at things like, where was this manufactured? Where were the components manufactured? Does it look like it's being warehoused in the US? All the questions that are really difficult to answer and take a really long time if you're a single consumer. And then it'll give me a suggestion. Lessons learned. I think this is something thing that I was really hinting at earlier. Your automations are going to be as good as your prompts. Or I saw somebody else in the questions asking about AI hallucinations. One of the things that I have learned over time is that it is really important when I give those natural language instructions to all of these tools to have well-defined goals, tell them what data sources I want them to construct. This is a product term, requirements, but really letting the AI know how it nails success for me. And that's what gives me an excellent result versus a mediocre one. Also ensuring if I wanted to pull from specific data sources that it has access to them, and also giving it basic instructions like if you cannot find the answer from an official website, do not make one up. Like stuff that seems very simple to us in conversation, perhaps, are things that AI need to be told. And so I think through the process of refinement, you kind of figure out how to give the AI those right tools. You can also ask it to show you its sources and its work, and I do that a lot. And that's a way to help guard against, some of those hallucinations or over helpful moments with some of the LLMs. The next lesson learned: when in doubt, ask. This is something I tell a lot of people when I'm doing troubleshooting at Zapier as well. If your agent is not working, it's an AI. Ask it why. Just say, hey, why didn't that go the way that I thought it would? And a lot of times it'll help you troubleshoot and keep troubleshooting with you. The other thing that's been really valuable is working with AI to explore a problem space or data set together. So for example, some of you may not be sure where to start with automation. You could go to one of these tools and say, hey, I'm looking to build out automations. This is what I do. Can you walk me through some of my day-to-day problems and suggest opportunities for automation? Codify what works. This is getting at, the import calculator question. Once you find a formula and you want to use it over and over again, that's often the opportunity for it to move out of chat into, let's say, a skill, into an automation with a trigger. And that's where it can consistently execute that formula. Standardize and reuse the pads that work. Add your tools and data. Someone else also alluded to this. You should add your tools and data to inform and make your AI tools able to actually take action for you. Now, there are ways to do this responsibly. I think there are certain categories of access that you want to be careful about. I'm still careful about giving my AI tools access to using my browser, but there are ways to integrate specific tools, and you can use MCP, you can use inbuilt integrations, but most of in the automations you saw me build just now, the first one in particular, it was really helpful because I was able to connect it to Google Sheets so it could pick up new products that came in, and also to email so it could email me the final listing. And so that's where building in your tools and your data are really helpful. If you want to explore data related to your business, there are ways you can use things like MCP to make that available to your AI tool to help you understand it better and find patterns. And then finally, again, I think both Katie and Samantha really alluded to this, but I have not found AI to be a replacement for my thoughts and labor. If anything, it changes the surfaces on which I'm thinking about things. I find that I work differently, but not less. A lot of my work happens both beforehand in instructing AI and giving it those clear guidelines and understanding the problem I want it to solve. And then a lot of it happens after in that process of refining and checking my AI's work and ensuring that it's accurate. And I think that those things continue to happen no matter what. Happy to connect with anyone on this call and talk more about this. You can find my LinkedIn and my email. Again, I work on building automations for folks all the time, and I'm always happy to hear from anyone who has real world problems they would like to solve.
I want to actually start with the question about hallucination. Anika, thanks so much for flagging that one. So Tracy G, way earlier on in the conversation, said, what is an AI hallucination? How do we prevent it? How do we detect them? I think, Anika, you just said some really useful tips in terms of literally telling it, do not make things up, cite your sources, because remember these AI tools they're built on patterns, and so it kind of is just thinking what it comes next. But are there any other tips or ideas that you all have had to reduce hallucinations or even to figure out when something is hallucinating?
The tips given were great. I also think you can use specific tools if it's something you're particularly worried about. So again, Perplexity is really great in the way it provides all the sources for what you're researching. So it's a lot easier, I think, to fact check what you're being given and then also look and see if the source it's pulling from is what you would consider a credible source. So a lot of times the LLMs are pulling from a source, but maybe it's not a source you would normally rely on. So I like to use Perplexity, especially when it's an area that I don't know enough about to be able to have that gut reaction to that's probably not quite right. And then again, Notebook is another one where you can tell it specifically which sources you want it to pull from. So again, if you want an answer on something specific that you're not sure about and it's you want to make sure it's not pulling from the broader web, you're only checking off and feeding it the exact sources you want it to use. So I would also think about it that way, just in terms of your tool selection.
I think those are really good points. I know that, I mean, this has been a few months, so Lord knows how much it has changed, right? But like there was a graph I saw that in some of the most popular LLMs, something like 50%, like Reddit and Wikipedia were basically used as sources more than 50% of the time, right? Reddit is a community. I love online communities. It's literally my career, but it's still like, it's not like a peer-reviewed fact-check journal. And Wikipedia is also a peer-edited system. So I think your points, Katie, on just like, what do you think is credible is really important because ultimately, with all of this, we still retain all of our own agency, you know?
Sure.
Which tools do you all feel are worth paying for versus just using free versions?
I mean, OverJoy.AI, I would absolutely pay for if you're a product-based business.
I think it ends up being the tools you find the easiest to work with. And that really, like I know, for example, I pay for Lovable and Claude. I don't need to pay for Zapier, but otherwise I would because they automate a lot of business operations. I would say start with the free plan and experiment building what you want to build. Look for examples and templates, and then see if it makes sense for you to upgrade to a paid plan. There are so many tools out there right now, and a lot of what works well for you could also depend on the way that that tool is framed and how easy it is for you to understand it.
Katie, anything you'd want to add? Otherwise, I can jump to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everything that was shared. I pay for both ChatGPT and Claude, and I am on the max plan for Claude because that gives me the broader co-work and Claude code access. And then the other one I pay a more substantial amount for is Base 44, which is really where the bulk of my agents are built out, and we've built some internal apps specific for Larkin there that we use. And to Anika's point, I started with all of these with the free plan, then upgraded to the next level, and almost all of them, right? It's you can start at the lowest and it's going to tell you when you're out of tokens. So I think play with the app, make sure it's working for your use case, and then you can always add more, but you don't have to jump right into a higher tier plan.
A very related question from Tess. From what you've seen, where is AI driving the fastest measurable ROI for small consumer brands? What separates the tools that actually work? Is there anything else any of you would want to add on to that? I think it's more talking about like it as a category for ROI versus like a specific tool.
I mean, Samantha and Katie, you both probably have a really good perspective. I was gonna say there's certain business processes that I think have been really valuable, right? Like organizing and classifying email, lead capture from like a variety of different surface areas and adding that to a simple CRM. It's really the business processes that I think are really valuable, probably for like lifestyle and fashion businesses, inventory management tools. Yeah.
I would add inventory management and marketing is a huge bucket that has been a huge. I mean, I will tell you because of some of the changes we're making just within this month, we're going to see a 400% increase to our bottom line. And so it's meaningful ROI when you're looking directly at your P&L and thinking about how you can translate that to either an automated process or a smarter process. So part of this too is like we have a data analysis or a data analyst agent that is pulling in all of our different metrics through API connections and manual uploads from a lot of different places where we source data. And it's giving us better insights. And so that's informing all of our marketing. So we're making bigger decisions that's driving better top line revenue, but we're also spending less and getting a bottom line increase as well, not just because of the top line increase, but because we're cutting a lot of expenses with that too. I can't emphasize enough, and this is one of the things I work a lot with founders on is like we go through your P&L and really prioritize because there's so much you could do within each bucket, but look at it and think, how can I make this process smarter, more efficient, or entirely automated? And it's a lot of savings opportunity there for sure.
On the topic of marketing, does anyone have quick specific recommendations for social media around content calendars, creating, incorporating their own photos, videos? Any particular tools you like there?
I do Canva.
Hmm.
I use Later for scheduling. And then I've been testing AI photography tools, in particular with Studio.
So we are leveraging Tolstoy, which is it integrates right if you're on Shopify, and if you're on a Shopify Plus plan, especially, it's got some really cool features, but it'll integrate right to it and optimize different categories on the site for conversion. But a lot you can do there with photos and videos, and then you can, even though it's on your site, you can also pull from it to leverage those across social media and in other places. And then we have an agent now that is really the start to finish process, right? So you can integrate it. It integrates with our Klaviyo. It integrates with Triple Whale, which is our attribution platform. It integrates with our scheduling tool. We use Metricool. So it's pulling in all the data points. It's creating the strategy, creating the content calendar creation. And then it has access to all of our Google Drives with all of our photo and UGC and video, and it's taking that and turning it into the social media assets, based also on like competitive research, social listening, all of these things, and integrating with our email platform. So from start to finish, it's going from strategy, content creation to publishing with, again, those human in the loop stopping points, so you can make sure you're approving things as it goes and nothing's getting published without your approval. But there's a lot of opportunities with different tools to kind of automate that process from start to finish.
Samantha, this one is for you specifically. Alyssa asks, is there a line where professional persistence can become counterproductive, mostly in regard to reach outs? Is there a risk to over following up?
Yeah, you can definitely annoy people for sure. I'm not too worried about it. And I think as well, like, yeah, know when to move on. I think life's rejection is God's protection, if you believe in that. And so don't try to force things. Like, listen to your gut. Like, all the time, I'm saying no. I'm not saying yes to every opportunity that comes my way. It has to be really, truly aligned with the direction that I want to take the brand. And so I will preface what I shared there with focus. You have to have focus, right? In terms of knowing kind of your North Star and does this partnership or opportunity align or not? Those are the ones that I really go after hard. I'm not trying to go after every opportunity.
Related question to that for both of you from Jody Tatiana in the chat window. She says, question I keep coming back to in real life, not just theory. We are all running businesses or building something we care deeply about, and there's no shortage of tools, platforms, resources pushed every day. How do each of you decide what actually deserves your attention, so that focus, without getting overwhelmed or pulled away from running your business? What do you ignore? How do you stay focused on what truly moves things forward?
I get distracted all the time and things can pull me away. And I think it goes back to like again, it's that cost benefit analysis for me, like and I hesitate whether to share this openly or not. But I have shifted all of my product photography now to AI. It's so much cost savings for my business. As a startup, I could spend $20,000 on a shoot. And so I know there's people have a lot of strong feelings about that. And for me, it comes back to I'm saving a lot of money as a self-funded founder, now leveraging AI tools. I spent probably 20 to 30 hours testing different options. But again, that cost benefit analysis ultimately was worth it for me to go down that route and find one that worked really well. And I will say Wiz Studio has been the best. But again, I get distracted. I usually wait until I hear something probably like 5 or 6 times. I think that's why I also love my consulting business is that I hear it from multiple people. I find out what my clients are doing. And if I keep hearing something come up, like I did with Overjoy, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously and spend some time into it. I have someone on my team offshore who's an AI specialist. And so I'll actually get her to test stuff too before I dive into it myself.
It's a super smart lens to put through it. And actually, Katie, you're probably like the 15th person that's told me about Notebook LM. So I'm like, okay, I need to do that this afternoon. Let's do that. Anyway, sorry, do you have any other comments that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a good question because I felt this deeply, particularly about a year ago. I mean, I was on every newsletter about AI. because it's rapidly changing so much and each tool is constantly changing, that it's you're drinking from a fire hose, and then at some point you can't actually do the work on your business because you're becoming full-time just trying to learn the different AI tools, right? And so I do think it's that balance again with don't put all your eggs in one basket. Try different tools, but be quick to pivot. So I think you'll get a pretty good feeling fairly quickly that as you're working with them, is this a tool I'm comfortable with? Is this adding meaningful value for me? And is this easy for me to use? And then, I think be quick to pivot to something else if not. But if you think about those three different buckets that I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of tools within each one, and I would say pick a couple within each to play with and get comfortable with those, but don't waste too much time trying a million different things because you'll end up dabbling in a lot, but you're not an expert in any of them, and then that's not going to serve your business long term.
I think these answers are actually dovetailing in to answer another question that's on my list from Evelyn, where she says there's so much great information. Where do we start? And I would say, like, listen to what these two just said about, starting small and focusing on going deep and learning something that really makes sense for you versus going broad. I also think, in terms of where do you start, to call back something that Anika said, start with the problems. What are the problems in your business, in your life, what's driving you crazy? And look for solutions that will solve those particular problems. And literally, you can start with a Google search. What AI tools will help me get better with my email? And you hit return, and what comes up next is actually Google will give you an AI generated answer at the top that you can dig into, or you can scroll down and read through like original Google results. Blech. But start with your problem, and then so much of this is experimentation. Nobody had classes in this, I'm assuming. I'm assuming a lot of it to, Samantha just said she spent 20 to 30 hours just figuring out the product photography AI tool herself. So it takes experimentation and practice. So start small. To use a really popular tech quote, you don't need to boil the ocean on this. Things are changing all the time, but hopefully keep on that focus. Katie, with your social media tool that you mentioned, the one that searches existing photo and video files, is that one specific tool or is it like a suite that you've built together?
So I've used that in a couple different ways. I would say the easiest solution there for me, pretty much now everything lives in my base 44
Okay.
agents. And that's where all of, again, the different data platforms are connected. And then it has access to Google Drive folders that have all of our UGC, all of our photo shoots, and it's constantly being updated. So it can directly connect and pull from there to create those assets for us. The one I think gap that someone still needs to solve is video editing. There's still not a great solution for that, and the agents can't do a ton there. So for the most part, it's automated other than that piece.
Last question, and then we will wrap up. Lan, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, or maybe it's wrong, says for a new startup, when do you think the owner should hire a human virtual assistant from other countries? So Samantha, this might be a good one for you. In the beginning, or when the startup starts making certain profits, especially these days when owners can utilize AI tools to save time. So do either of you have a perspective on when bringing in a VA, specifically offshore, could be helpful?
I mean, so the only place that I really still leverage offshore support is for Instagram, because of the algorithm. I tested recently, I wanted it to work so bad, a technology called Phantom Buster, where you can like point it to other accounts and it can like go and send follow requests, every hour or whatever, like 20 follow requests. It didn't work. It kept breaking. So that is like the only area in terms of sending those DMs on Instagram to align people in my audience where I have to still use someone offshore for that strategy because I have not come across, maybe someone has, please share it if you have, like social media kind of outreach tools that work really well from that perspective. I know many chat, like you can send automated responses when someone follows you, etc. But in terms of like the cold outreach or sending those follow requests, which is like a really scrappy way to grow your followers, I still leverage offshore support for that.
Thank you both so much for your time and for the extra time coming over. And thank you all who are still hanging on with us here at the end. This has been an awesome conversation. Keep an eye out for our next webinar. This is obviously a hot topic. We'll be talking about AI all year. And good luck to everyone. Keep launching.